We are here for a fun webinar on the future of a cookieless web and what that means for marketing, what that means for measurement, and all that fun stuff. I'm here. I'm Ron. I'm here with Tony, and excited to be chatting with you. How's it going, Tony?
Good. I'm excited to talk cookieless. How's it going on your end?
I'm great. I purposely had no cookies today in light of this conversation, although I normally love my cookies.
If I made that joke, my team would be mocking me right now. So I'm glad you said it instead of me.
Well, my team does mock me all day long, and I'm okay with that. I've learned that that's part of my job. If I'm not getting mocked by my team, I've done something wrong.
Well said.
So we have a good number of folks joining, which is awesome. We generally give it like a minute or two just to let people, a bit of the stragglers come in. So we'll kick off formally at 2:02, which is, there we go. Maybe give it another 20 seconds. Where are you dialing in from Tony?
So I am finally in sunny Toronto. It was freezing cold the past few days. You'd never know it was summer, but here in Toronto, Canada.
I was actually there this past weekend for a wedding.
Nice.
So I didn't realize you were there. I would have said hi.
We miss each other. We missed each other in New York last week, and we missed each other in Toronto this weekend. So
maybe we'll meet in like Buffalo or Rochester in the middle sometime.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. We got 30 folks. We're just about 2 minutes in, so we'll kick this off. More people generally tend to join, but before we dive into the actual topic, a cookieless future and what that means for marketing, let's do some backgrounds. Tony, you want to take it away? Tell us a bit about yourself. Tell us a bit about Illumina.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks again for having me here and for hosting this. This is great. So my name is Tony Vlismas. I look after marketing here at Illumina. So we're an ad tech company. We work with brands and agencies, and we help them find, engage, and convert their future customers. And we do that using an intuitive drag and drop interface or managed services as well. I think what makes us unique is our approach is to follow the customer journey to clean what's often called that messy middle. We take a multi-channel approach. We combine both paid and their own media all into one platform. We help justify that multi-channel ROI, and ultimately, in the end, we help them find their right customer fast. And that's what Illumina does.
Awesome. Sounds like a great value prop. Appreciate you joining this webinar. I'll go next. I'm Ron Jacobson. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Rockerbox. Rockerbox is aiming to build the world's best marketing measurement product, full stop. We work with brands like Staples, WeightWatchers, Lowe Hotels to really help them measure the effectiveness of all their marketing. A big focus of this is on actual business outcomes. So what's driving revenue, what's driving profits. And we think about this from the perspective of multiple methodologies. So I think it's really important for marketers at scale to not try to find a silver bullet, thinking that any one type of measurement is this panacea that will solve all their marketing questions, but rather to provide a platform that gives flexibility across MTA and MMM and benchmarks and surveys, so you can have the right type of measurement to answer the right question. And that's Rockerbox. Obviously, I know we're going to be talking about cookies. It's a huge topic for our customers and how they can think about measuring their marketing and running effective marketing. So let's dive in. Before I go, Maggie, our head of market, one of our great people from our marketing team, would yell at me if I don't say, ask questions. We can see the chats coming in, so if anything comes up, let us know. Generally, I prefer to interrupt live so we can actually speak to questions live as they're coming in, because that's, I think, just more fruitful that way. But sometimes I won't do that, so we'll see it. We'll wing it and see how it goes. But please ask any questions, and then let's take it away. I think Tony's going to kick us off here.
Absolutely. So the measurements expert. So let's start with what happens when the third-party cookies do go away. So the first question, are they necessary to measure marketing? And what does the removal mean for fellow marketers like you, me, and the people that we work with?
Awesome question. I think it also helps to probably lay the kind of landscape of where we even are as it relates to cookie deprecation. First thing to call out is we're talking about third-party cookies, which is distinct from first-party cookies. Third-party cookies are cookies that can follow a user around across multiple domains. So it provides the ability to know that the same person who went to rockerbox.com, for example, was then on CNN.com 5 days later. first-party cookies are cookies that are essentially encapsulated to the domain that the cookie was set on. There aren't any changes happening to date on the first-party cookie space. Many changes happening in the third-party cookie space. Where are we so far? Safari has deprecated third-party cookies. Firefox has, and Google Chrome will at some point supposedly deprecate third-party cookies. It was supposed to happen this year. Now it's likely pushed to next year or 2030. TBD, but let's just assume at some point it's going to happen because that's frankly the way that Rockerbox operates their business. The moment Safari got rid of third-party cookies, the writing was on the wall, and we moved towards a world where we measure all marketing just leveraging, not just leveraging first-party cookies, but rather not leveraging third-party cookies. The short answer is, are third-party cookies necessary for marketing measurement? Is absolutely no. The way I think about this is I like to always think in terms of extremes. There are many channels that have nothing to do with cookies whatsoever. Think about TV, linear TV. Think about direct mail. Think about podcasts. Think about radio. These are all channels that even in a world 5-10 years ago when we had third-party cookies, you weren't measuring them leveraging third-party cookies. So fundamentally, the pool of channels that even required third-party cookies as a methodology to measure are pretty small, both in terms of just the number of channels, but also if you look at it from a percentage of spend, the channels that are really third-party cookie dependent, which I'll get to in a second, generally make a pretty small percentage of our client spend that we see across the roughly $5 billion a year that Rockerbox measures. Which channels are the most reliant on third-party cookies, and which ones are going to be, frankly, the most affected by the removal of third-party cookies? It's open web. It's the open web, but even more so, view through measurement in the open web. What that means is if you got served an ad on ESPN, you don't click on the ad, and then 2 days later you come to rockerbox.com, let's assume it was a Rockerbox ad, that ability to connect those two dots, that's gone. And we'll talk a bit about this later, Tony and I, around, well, what does that look like in the future? But that sliver of marketing is no longer going to be measured. It can no longer be measured deterministically from a path to conversion perspective. We find that generally makes around less than 0.5% of the ad spend of our clients. So we can assume roughly less than 0.5% of the ad spend of our clients is suddenly harder to measure than ever before. What does the removal mean for marketers? To me, I think from a day-to-day practitioner perspective of running media, and Tony can speak a lot better to this, there definitely are implications. Your classic retargeting campaigns are going to be significantly harder to run. I'll let Tony dive more into there. From a measurement perspective, not that much. I think if you were trying to kind of fit the square peg into the round hole of third-party cookies to all marketing channel measurement to begin with, you were barking up the wrong tree from the get-go. So for marketers that weren't based on that foundation, but rather they're using first-party cookies, first-party data, acquiring data sets that can help with measurement, probabilistic measurement, they're not really seeing an impact on this. So that's at least what we're seeing from our customer base. Tony, I'll pass this to you. What are your thoughts? What do you agree or disagree with me on?
Yeah, no, listen, I echo a lot of what you said, in particular that past. I think this is now our opportunity. You know, what does it mean for marketers? It means we get to focus in on what marketers do really, really well. We get to now focus in on, you said it, the first party data. The only way we're going to get that is by building those relationships. Now we have to find ways to build it. Now, you also talked about the increased cost. So of course, there's now increased cost to that, but it comes with having a stronger relationship with your client, with your customer, understanding them more, and then being able to use that data to give them just a better overall experience. I think this gives other vendors the opportunity to introduce new things as well. You know, we've seen Google's privacy box. We've seen all sorts of companies, like even as much as United Airlines, I believe, I think it was United on Friday, come up with their own media plan now, their own media network. You got Randell from Target. There's still some cons there, of course. You're still talking walled garden here, but there's definitely other ways that as marketers, we can start focusing in on that. We could start looking at our audiences and start finding lookalike audiences. But when you look at the trend as well, look at, for example, what Apple News has done to the news industry. Look at least in Canada, Meta no longer shares news from news media. As much as early as yesterday, Apple announced enhancements to Safari Reader, which is really going to start, those ads will start disappearing in that. So I think now is more important than ever, based on all these pieces, legislature aside, all the ad blockers aside, just as an industry, we're moving forward to being able to create a better web, a privacy-first web, an intent-based web. So I think as marketers, it allows us to focus more on that customer experience. I think we've relied too much on just measuring, and just keep measuring. But now it's time to actually act on that data that we've been collecting and creating a better web experience.
I am on the same page. It's actually a great segue. And also, just pause again. I know we had some more people who joined. If you have questions, chat them in. Tony and I will take them at any point. I'll start with doing this one, Tony. If not measurement, what are third-party cookies used for, both historically and currently? I think we talked a little bit about this, but maybe you want to cover some other areas.
Yeah, much like in the first question, you covered some history. So let's talk a bit about that history. So cookies are generally used for contextual targeting, data collection, audience segmentation, measurement. That's that question. Sometimes that's good, right? Your cookies, it's going to help you with your login, finding your existing customers, your history for relevance. But it's also, and this is why I think Google wants to start getting away with it, why you start seeing some of the legislation around it, it's the bad. It's the following of you. It's the sharing of the data without your permission. Sometimes even sharing sensitive information from one vendor to the next. So I think this will be good, for consumers. Again, we will champion customer privacy. We'll empower them to control their data. I think, though, some users are going to be a little bit surprised by what this does. And I use the example of GDPR. When it was announced over in Europe, it came with a whole other set of regulations. Now you got a bunch of these pop-ups and re-asking for permission. And it actually, and when I was in Greece, so we see some of that experience here, but when I was overseas, the experience is so much more different, actually. So I don't know that users honestly are prepared for what might come with that. What they rely on exchanging their information for getting content might not be there anymore. That option might not be there, or they might not realize that they're signing over a lot of their personal information for it. But again, I think consumers, I think this is the right move. But I would say that's how we're currently using cookies.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is interesting to think about the second order consequences of everything. You mentioned GDPR. The second order consequence there was, accept cookie bars every single website you go to in Europe, which kind of sucks for everybody. I think another second order consequence of this is that, and I guess I'll step back a lot. Like, I'm all for consumer privacy. I think most consumers candidly don't care and don't really know about it. And I think the ironic part about this is that we're moving from a world where, frankly, third-party cookies were actually imperfect themselves, right? It wasn't cross-browser, it wasn't cross-device, it wasn't cross-browser. There were a lot of issues with third-party cookies themselves that are going to be mitigated without third-party cookies when you go to first-party data. So we went from a world where people were kind of by default just using third-party cookies and didn't really know what it meant, to be frank with you. And now we're moving to a world where we're using a lot of first-party data, which theoretically is more personal. It's email, it's phone numbers, physical mailing addresses, and that's actually going to lead to a better form of measurement. So I guess what were they used for historically? Retargeting, I think, was the most obvious media execution tactic they were associated with. It was also, in my mind, used as a bit of a scapegoat of thinking that we can measure everything with third-party cookies when, frankly, you couldn't to begin with. So in a way, I think it's somewhat stalled out thought in terms of how you could better do measurement when everybody tried to push things into the third-party cookie. Third-party cookies is like the solution for everything. So I think that historical use is gone, and frankly, I think it's leading to a lot of innovation today in how we think about measurement, which I think might be a pretty decent segue to this next question. Look at that. What's a better approach to marketing measurement if third-party cookies were never the way? Do you have a take, Tony?
So look, you introduced us to third-party, you introduced us to first-party as well. Let me introduce the rest of the audience now to zero-party. So it's a less commonly heard term, but it's where
there's also second-party too, by the way.
I'm going to let you answer that one. So yeah, it's where your prospect or new customer is sharing their preference in exchange for an optimized marketing experience. So I think that's the focus that we're going to start going. And you touched on these in the first answer too, right? Like digital out of home, CTV, email, a great way that you can now, now those have a separate set of challenges, of course, through dummy email addresses and whatnot. But it's all that first party data. It's relying on other technologies like geo-targeting, browser APIs, things around privacy sandbox, if we're using Google solutions, there's some pieces around that. Opting in again, like exchanging your information for something in exchange for some of that better data. One thing I also want to touch in, and I think at the end, it's not the consumer that needs to change here with cookies going away. It's the marketer, right? It's us. And that's why I think that this question really leans in on that. It's what do we need to do to change? It's not the consumer that's going to change. Even if they had no idea what they were doing, every time they just say, yes, opt in, agree. That won't be the case anymore. And people are getting smarter and they're not, giving up their information as easily. Your thoughts?
I actually like to go back like 10 years and think about 10 years ago, how should measurement have been approached? And it's funny because a lot of what I'm saying, a lot of what should have been done 10 years ago is actually still the same today. So 10 years ago, media mix modeling was a thing. It's still a thing today. It's gotten a little bit better. It's gotten faster. You're able to build better models. You're able to test more models and more variations of models. But this methodology continues to exist from a decade ago to today. You have geotesting, or rather an experimentation framework, that could be holdouts or scale-ups on a certain geo-level basis, or even an audience of user basis. Existed a decade ago, exists today, still being used today. I remember 10 years ago when I was at Nexus, folks would be doing geo holdout tests on programmatic advertising campaigns. So, the same methodology a decade ago, still around today. A decade ago, we had multi-touch attribution. That still exists today. The only difference is the foundation that it was done a decade ago. I kind of call it the original sin of MTA. The original sin was that they thought third-party cookies are the way to do it. And again, once you enter it with the perspective of third-party cookies, you try to use that tool for everything. But how are you using third-party cookies to measure somebody viewing it on Pinterest or Snapchat or Facebook? You're not. How are you using third-party cookies to measure email? You're not. So this original idea of MTA 10 years ago has actually been corrected today in a world where you don't use third-party cookies and you base it off of first-party data. You capture emails, phone numbers, physical mailing addresses. You strike partnerships that give you access to view through data. And the join key is not a third-party cookie because that doesn't make any sense, but it's first-party data. Obviously, it has to be privacy compliant, opt-in data, but it does give much more deterministic measurement. The fact that I saw it on Pinterest on my mobile phone, and then 2 days later I go and purchase on a website, well, that's the same email address. So you can suddenly connect those dots that you never could before. And then beyond that, you have other types of measurement. You have surveys, you have benchmarks, all approaches that still exist today. So in a way, I think many things haven't changed as much as we think that they have. In fact, I just think that either the techniques have all gotten better, or they've kind of, again, shifted away from that original sin of being based on a faulty foundation to begin with.
Yeah. And I think a good point that you bring up along those lines is, new things will come, and there will be new sins as well. Again, there's still no that one final answer. But I think we've also gotten into this rut where we try to collect as much information as we can. And I hinted at this earlier, right? Let's measure. Let's start reacting now. Let's actually take the data that we do have, the data that does connect, and do something with it, as opposed to just continuing to build up all this data. As marketers, let's move forward. Let's make mistakes as well. If they're wrong, the data will tell us, the reporting will tell us, and we'll adjust, we'll course correct.
Let me ask you a question there. I agree beyond 100%. I think the worst part about any sort of analytics or measurement is just data for the sake of data with no action on it. I'm curious, why do you see at times clients not acting on the data that they have? Is it that they don't have the know-how internally? They don't leverage their agencies or partners effectively enough? That they're just, I'm curious why do you see that happening?
Yeah, look, we talked
about. Sorry, this is a digression from the formal question, so apologies.
I don't know if your apologies is to the audience. I'm not sure, but no apology needed. Look, we talked to a lot of CMOs. I think one of the biggest reasons, especially, is the CMO is finding it more and more difficult to prove MROI or even just ROI to their CFO. And I think that conversation doesn't happen often enough. And as a result, they're almost afraid to move forward with taking some of that action. I think some of it also, you touched on it, is it lack of understanding what to do with it. I think there's still, as marketers, we have this inherent fear. This came up in last week's session over at BI. Someone said, to be a marketer, you have to be ready to take the blame. If you want to grow up to be a CMO one day, you have to be ready to take the blame, because when something goes wrong, the marketing department's gonna be at fault for it. Whether that's true or not, it's instilled in us. So I think we have this fear of moving forward. But I often say, for every click that someone makes of a banner or whatever, that's great. You're learning, but you're also learning every time they don't click something. So again, use all the data, make informed decisions, move forward. And if you're wrong, if you're moving forward quicker, you can also change the direction. Whereas if you're just waiting to do this one big move and it's the wrong move, that's when I think you start getting into trouble. But so I would say those are like the 2 or 3 reasons that I'm seeing.
Yeah, I mean, fear is a big one. And it's interesting because fear also leads, I think, a lot to measurement conversations. You're a new CMO of an organization and you feel as if you need to, you're brought in for a reason, right? Obviously something wasn't working. So you often feel like you need to change the measurement that was being done before. I get that. I understand why. You've made decisions for a year and you need to somewhat justify those. Or at least that's a thought process. Although I think and see some of the best CMOs are very open to, hey, we learned that what we did in the last quarter was not effective. Great. My line is always, as long as you're learning, that's okay. If you're acting and not learning, that's not acceptable. And I think that's actually where measurement and taking action on measurement can be really is probably the most important thing. Just results for the sake of results with doing nothing on it is kind of useless.
Yeah. Let's hit this next question. What are the true building blocks of reliable and useful attribution? What say you, Ron?
What say I? The way that I think about this, and Rockerbox talks about this a lot, is it all starts with a solid data foundation. It's ironic because we were just talking about having too much data, but I do think investing in actually a solid data foundation, it is really important because it does enable you to get answers to the questions you're looking to. Now, mind you, can take action on those answers, but unless you have the right data in place, everything is kind of downstream of that. To us, what does that mean? To me, that means there's some simple things. It's having all of your marketing spend centralized. If you don't have one location where you can go and see how much you spent on linear TV or podcasts or radio, it's hard to do any sort of it's funny, my thumbs are doing it's hard to do any sort of calculations. If you session data set, you understand all the sessions that are being given. You understand path to conversion, super important data set. And there are a couple other conversions and all these other things, but we kind of think of them as like the core marketing data sets on top of which you can start to do measurement. The last thing I'd say there is, as much as possible, it is trying to get customers to opt in. It's trying to get them to opt in to giving you their information. And I think that's actually incumbent on marketers to be really smart and creative, and not even just marketers, but organization overall, to really understand the value prop that you have with your customers. If you're asking them to give you something, you need to make sure what you're giving them back in return, is equal, if not more value, providing more value. We're seeing a lot of clients doing really interesting things in terms of memberships and benefits of being a member. We see a lot of folks with like warranties, give us your email and you get like an extended warranty. So there does have to be some sort of a trade to get customers to provide that information. But all of those to us are the foundational data sets on top of which you can start to do attribution. That could be media mix modeling, that could be surveys, that could be benchmarks, that could be geo holdout tests. If you don't know where your customers are purchasing or converting, it's hard to construct a geo test. So to us, it's really, what are the primitives? And then on top of there, you can start to do measurement.
Yeah. So I looked at this as from 2 aspects. First is the internal, and you kind of hinted at this earlier as well yourself. This is our opportunity as marketers to work alongside product and sales. So what are we building? What are we selling? And how are we talking about it? This is our opportunity to work tighter with product and with sales, because again, we can't just rely on third-party cookies. Externally, as marketers, this is our chance to now really start building those meaningful dialogues and relationships with our customers, as opposed to just advertising at them. I think there's a distinction there. And in the conference that I was at last week, where we were talking a lot about AI, of course, what came up is using AI to start building those curated experiences. So the data that you do have, that first-party data that you do have, build greater experiences with your existing customers. Don't always just go after that new one. How do you cross-sell? How do you upsell? And that's now us working alongside CS, your customer success teams, working along with them to create a great, delightful experience afterwards as well. Just because you're your current customer doesn't mean marketing shouldn't be working with them. So I think this gives us our opportunity internally to start working with more functions, and externally to start really appreciating the customers that we have and building those better experiences.
Listen, that's true for brand selling it to consumers is true for, Rockerbox and Illumina companies as well. We have to treat our customer. It all starts with their
Absolutely.
existing customers. So I couldn't agree more there. This is our last question. Then we go to formal Q&A. So this is where we're going to get to next. How does diversified measurement provide a clearer picture of marketing performance? I'll give it a quick go. I mean, I just think fundamentally all types of measurement answer different questions. If you're looking to understand how to think about your budget moving forward, there's certain types of measurement that are right for that. If you're looking to understand the path to conversion, types of measurement for that. If you're looking to understand which channel gets you in front of net new customers the best, you want the right type of measurement for that. We think about this a lot internally as sort of like two columns on an Excel a spreadsheet. Column one is the question. Column two is what is the right either data set or measurement framework to answer that question. So it's not that sexy of an answer. It's really, I just think different types of measurement are used for different things, but being really focused on that's important because a lot of times we see brands kind of using the wrong tool for the wrong job. That might be a difficult part here, and you start to hear words like triangulation these days. It's kind of the word of the moment. Calibration is Google's version of this word. But you do get to where you see divergent results across multiple methodologies. So for whatever reason, one question, you're looking to answer it using multiple methodologies, sometimes you get multiple results. I actually think that, differing results. I think that's actually very helpful. I think it kind of helps you understand where you need to dig in deeper because something about the original question is not fine-tuned enough. If you're seeing different results, it could be that you don't understand the marketing tactics well enough, you don't understand the question well enough, there's an issue with the data. But as you dive deeper and deeper, you start to really understand your business and your marketing a lot more. If everything is aligned, by the way, great. You kind of know there's, you can just act on that data. That's a bit rarer than you might expect that.
Yeah.
What's your take, Tony?
Yeah, so I would phrase it slightly differently, but yeah, again, I think we're on the same page here. I think by using a mix of measurements, we're also understanding that audience more. And you kind of hit on them when you say like, oh, if you're measuring this, you should be using this. If you're using this, you should be measuring this. So I don't think there's that, I don't think third-party cookies was our answer to everything. I think we all know that as marketers. So by using a mix of these measurements, we're truly able to really understand our audience more. And I think now more than ever, audiences are more dynamic. Their preferences are constantly changing. So the way we measure has to change as well. And by using a mix of things, not just one set of, one set of data or one algorithm to measure something, you're able to be a little more dynamic. Again, as marketers, we want to always be dynamic. We want to be, ahead of that curve. As your audience, as their preferences are changing, so should your measurement. And again, taking action with it, testing out things and finding new tools to help you out with that.
Awesome. Well, we made it through all five. We now have just a pure Q&A.
We did it, Ron. We did it, Ron.
We did it, Tony. Anybody have any questions for us? It could be about anything. Third-party cookies, measurement, which is better, Toronto or New York City? You name it, we're happy to talk about it. So any questions coming in?
We already talked before this about the Apple keynotes. If anyone has questions about that, Ron and I are happy to weigh in. Might have a shy group today, Ron. So let me kick off with a question. Maybe not exactly around marketers, but are you thinking Google's going to kick this off one more time? Are you thinking this is it, or do you think they're going to keep pushing this off until they have a stronger solution, or are they really waiting for the industry to have a stronger solution?
So my root answer is I don't really care what the hell Google does anymore. Google's going to do what Google's going to do, and I can't.
Good answer.
To be honest with you, if I had to bet, I think we're talking at earliest 26. That's my bet. But I've had the rug pulled under me enough times that screw it. Whatever they do is what they do. What's your take?
Good perspective. I think they rushed to market with some of this AI stuff to try to beat OpenAI, and try to beat them. And I think they faltered a bit because of that. So they're either going to rush this cookieless thing and then, get some bad press from it, or slow down, take the time to do this properly. I think Google still has a lot to benefit with third-party cookies. So I don't know that they're in a huge rush.
So I actually think they've been investing a lot in media mix modeling lately, and I think I asked myself the question like why? Why is that so important to them? To me, if I'm Google, I'm worried about Google search deteriorating with the rise of AI, which means a lot of my biggest money making source is going away. But then I think of YouTube, which I think is like the biggest asset that Google has, a super important, great marketing channel. YouTube's very upper funnel though. So, a classic path to conversion, last click based approach, great for branded search, not as strong for something like YouTube. Media mix modeling can be a lot more effective for something like YouTube. So I think that that's part of where they're coming at this from, but that's my cynical take on it.
Nice. Well, it's a good thing Laura has a couple of questions for us. So that's good.
Yes.
Good timing.
So Laura's first question is measuring incrementality of ads out. That is a great question. And I actually posted something on LinkedIn around a month ago, and I didn't give any comment on it, and it got no engagement. And I think it deserved more engagement. But there's this thing called like the Gartner hype cycle. And there's, a peak of inflated expectations, the trough of disillusionment, and then it goes to sort of just like, I forget what the end of it is, just like normality. And I feel like incrementality was right at the peak of inflated expectations around 2 years ago. And I think it's kind of gone down now into that trough of disillusionment. I think it's going to come back up though. And I actually think incrementality testing is a super important part of your marketing measurement suite that you should be leveraging. It's hard though. It's hard though, and there are actual costs to it. There are actual revenue costs, there are operational costs. And I think that's kind of why it went from this idea of like the perfect thing, they call it the golden standard of measurement, classic random control tests, to one where we need to figure out how do we leverage this on a cadence. Maybe it's once a month, maybe it's once a quarter, maybe it's twice a year, in a way that can help us measure our marketing. I think the companies that get to that like good, stable, long-term testing framework position will find incrementality testing very, very, very valuable. That means you could either use the platform-specific tests that they all offer for you, or there are incrementality testing vendors out there that you can also go and look at, and some of them are actually pretty good. So my short answer, I think it's past the peak of inflated expectations. I think it's slowly going to get past that trough of disillusionment, and I think it's called a plateau of productivity. I think that's what it's called. But that's my take there. How about Tony? You want to take the next one? Thoughts on ways to measure the halo impact of TikTok on retail sales?
Oh gosh, you know what? I'm going to be honest. I'm going to pass that over to you, Ron.
Fair enough. Retail, it depends what it means. So retail, if it means like, classic retail being sold in like a Target or things like that, you're going to have, basically it's the question of this, is there user level data or not? If you're trying to understand the impact of TikTok on your own and operated direct to consumer, there are ways to do that. Rockerbox struck a relationship with TikTok. We get view-through data from them, user level deterministic, so we can match those things. If you're trying to determine the impact of it on classic retail, you're going to have to either do some form of surveys, media mix modeling, geo holdout testing, something like that to have some sense of it. Ways to overcome challenges of measuring incrementality of retail media / within retail walled gardens.
Yeah, I got to say, I love this question because when I was at Possible in Miami a couple months ago, everyone on stage was all talking about, we have great data, but the ones saying that were all these big retail partners, and it's their data, so it's still having to work with them and kind of creating a different type of walled garden. I don't know that anyone outside of them had real answers around that. I know we partner, of course, with a lot of these folks. That's how we we partner to get that type of data. Do you have anything more specific, Ron, on your end?
Listen, I think if you're buying media in retail, if you're buying retail media, and the conversion's happening within that retail media environment, there is a relatively decent closed loop there to be able to track between the media and the conversion happening. I think the larger question there ends up being, though, how do you know if your, non-retail media is driving retail media conversions? This is becoming really wordy. What I mean by there, you're serving ads on Facebook. Is that driving sales to, Target's website, let's say, assuming you're a CPG sale on Target? Conversely, if you're running ads on Target's retail media network, is that driving sales to non-Target CPG? That's much harder, to be frank. And either you need to be able to strike some really interesting relationships where you get access to data sets. Those could be directly with the the retail media provider, or it could be some of the third parties that are data aggregators, credit card data and things like that. Or you're going to have to use a non-user level way to measure your marketing, knowing the drawbacks of that. It's going to be less granular. It's going to be slower cadence. It's going to be less apt for in-platform optimizations, more for overall budgeting. So, the retailers pick and choose what data to share. So
she brings up an absolute good point, and I don't think there's that solvable answer just yet. And I think we're all going to run into that challenge.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think a lot of this comes down to the. I run a measurement company, and I'm going to say this: it's imperfect. There's a bit of an art to it. It's not. There is no perfect way to do it. It's just the truth. I wish there was a silver bullet, but there isn't. I think a lot of measurement is trying to get directionally accurate, and obviously to minimize imperfections as much as possible. But it's a challenge.
And I think you could say that in any industry, like not just in marketing, and in anything where, you just got to try stuff sometimes and learn from that. So sometimes it is kind of, shooting in the blind there, but, or in the dark rather. But again, being able to then take whatever data you do have and make educated decisions on what that next step is. Good.
Laura
good
has officially won the award of the best questioner. So props to Laura.
Absolutely.
Anybody else have any questions?
No, I think we solved it all. Ron, we gave him the answers to everything. We solved it all. Look at us solving everything.
We did it, Tony.
No more questions.
We did it.
Yeah.
We can take the rest of the day off now, right?
Yeah.
But listen, I really appreciate you joining me here, Tony. Enjoyed the conversation. Thanks everybody for joining and listening in. It's a huge topic that obviously is top of mind for everyone, Rockerbox, Illumina, and hopefully all of you that joined. So really appreciate it. If you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out directly to me and Tony. Tony, what's the best way to get in touch with you? For me, it's ron@rockerbox.com. What do you recommend for yourself?
Tony Vlismas at Illumina.com. Or you can find me on LinkedIn, right? All of us. We're all on LinkedIn.
There you go.
Yeah. Thanks again for having us.
Thanks again.
And thanks for hosting this.
No, of course. And hope everyone has a good rest of the day.
Okay. Bye, everyone.